wouldn't it have been an ideal? Think back to week one. And week one has become the day where the Sunday morning pregame show, and I can say this because I'm on a Sunday night pregame show, but the Sunday morning pregame show crowd has stuff that happened in the offseason that we didn't know about. And there's always one or two. Now, sometimes it's old news that they repackage or the person just didn't realize it's old news. That happens. And sometimes it's something we really didn't know. Remember when, I think it was 2020, Tom Brady's first game with the Bucs, they were playing the Saints, and the Sunday Splash breathlessly delivered report was that the Saints considered Tom Brady when it looked like Drew Brees wasn't going to play, possibly, when he was considering retirement in 2020. They wanted Tom Brady, and maybe if Drew Brees came back, they were still thinking about Tom Brady. That was the week one Sunday Splash report. Well, this year, it would have been perfect for any summer all of the Sunday morning Sunday Splash crowd to tell us that the 49ers tried to get Tom Brady to be their starting quarterback for 2023. That would have been perfect. Nobody knew. Nobody knew. Week one, week two, through week 18, through the wild card round. And it wasn't until Nick Wagner of ESPN.com was doing an interview with Brock Purdy that became one of these long reads that we all say, oh, great, long read, and nobody reads it. And what happens? 5,000, 6,000 words. Now we read it if there's news in it and if that news gets trumpeted. This was news that was buried at the bottom. I'd love to know how in the hell nobody at ESPN, in the crafting and editing of this article, realized that they had a bombshell that they buried near the bottom. Brock Purdy telling Nick Wagner that Kyle Shanahan told him, if we can get Tom Brady, we're going to try to get him. That he was going to be the starter. And if not, it was going to be Brock Purdy. And Purdy's attitude was, yeah, he's the GOAT, I get it. But sometimes deep down, something inside of me was like, dude, I just showed you I can play well in this system, and we were one game away from the Super Bowl. So, I mean, it gave Purdy a little bit of fire, it gave him a little edge, it gave him a little motivation. But, and this isn't unnamed sources. This isn't I'm told. This is Brock Purdy telling Charean. You were on the text chain yesterday when MDS discovered this thing and sent it to us, and he was like, what the hell is this? And we said, what the hell is this? How does it, how does something that nobody knew about that is that significant involving Tom Brady being brought back to the team he grew up rooting for 3 years after he knocked on the door and they said nobody's home when he wanted to play for the 49ers in 2020? That was his first choice in 2020. How does that stay unknown? And then how does it get buried at the bottom of an article that I skimmed through it? There was otherwise nothing in there that anybody would have cared about. That's the thing people would have cared about. I don't get it. Do you understand? Do you have any way to help me understand how that happened?
No, and I know when you have an assignment on a long read that you're trying to fill words and get it in, but when you got that quote, you've got to make that your lead of your story or pull it out and make it a separate story. To me, it was that big that you make it a separate story apart from the long read that you're writing on Brock Purdy. And I blame the editor as much as I blame Nick Wagner for saying, hey, you got this great quote here. We didn't know this. We need to do something with this, or we need to rework the lead, or whatever it is. But yeah, it was news, and it was news that was buried in a story, and it shouldn't have been. And I would guess that Nick Wagner is well aware of that now and regrets that he didn't make that the lead or pull it out and make it bigger news. And it was like nobody was talking about it until we wrote about it yesterday. So, I find it interesting that they went after Tom Brady. They did need somebody because they weren't certain because the surgery kept getting pushed back. And it finally happened for Brock Purdy in March. It was late that it happened, and he didn't start throwing till late May after that, and he started that build-up. So there was some uncertainty about when he's coming back. How many games is he going to miss? Is he going to be there for week one? If he's not there for week one, when are we going to get him back? They had to have a backup plan. But we all thought when they signed Sam Darnold, like that was the backup plan. Well, that was the backup plan. They actually talked to Tom Brady, we find out now, to see if he would come back as the real backup plan. And it wouldn't have been, let's say that Brock Purdy's not ready to go in week 1 and Sam Darnold starts. Well, Brock Purdy's going to regain the starting job whenever he comes back. It wouldn't have been like that with Tom Brady. Tom Brady would have kept the starting job until he was hurt or whatever else happened, or finished the season or whatever else happened. But Brock Purdy would not have regained that starting job if they had signed Tom Brady.
Yeah, Brady was plan A, Purdy was plan B. Purdy said so. And it's funny when you tweet this story, and I understand that we're in an air fryer society, but it's amazing how many people, through their responses to a given tweet, make it clear that they did not read the story. Because like, oh, you're just making stuff up. No. If anybody's making stuff up, it's Brock Purdy. Because Purdy said it on the record. Purdy said it. And I have yet to see any claim that Purdy was taken out of context, that it was a joke, like Matt LaFleur saying that he says a prayer every time Anders Carlson goes out for a kick. That was a joke that was taken out of context by Tom Rinaldi. So I haven't seen that. And look, we when I saw this, and you know, part of what you develop, and you hope you can trust it, is a sense of what is newsy. And you have to have a good sense of what people are going to be interested in. I immediately saw this and said, this is something people are going to be interested in. We need to make a big deal out of this. And we made a big deal out of it. And later in the day, Kyle Shanahan had his press conference and nobody asked him about it. How did nobody ask him about it? And Brock Purdy will talk this week. Will he be asked about what he said to Nick Wagner? Is that what you said? Care to elaborate? Anything more to add? Shanahan will be talking again later this week. I just think that, and again, we're not here to kiss ass. We're here to keep it real. I didn't think of this angle until today. I'm going to start here. It's possible it was buried in the Nick Wagner item on ESPN.com, and they didn't make a big deal out of it that would have become part of the churn for the studio shows. I mean, you know, they were too busy focused on the Cowboys last week anyway. But remember I said how week 1, that's the perfect time for the Sunday morning pregame news crowd to tell us stuff we didn't know about that happened in the offseason, and that happens. Kind of makes their main guy look bad that he didn't know. Their main guy who went to Michigan, where Brady went. Their main guy who's got deep connections to Don Yee, who represents Tom Brady. Their main guy didn't know. He went all season not knowing. If you make a big deal about it now, it kind of makes him look bad. And there are very real internal politics. When you're paying the main guy almost $10 million a year, you're not going to do anything to make the main guy look bad. Maybe that's Occam's razor here. Maybe that's the simplest explanation. That it wasn't just Nick Wagner doesn't have the sense to realize he's sitting on a bombshell and he buried it deep under his seat. Or that the editor didn't realize this is pretty big news. This is something we can make some hay with on the various ESPN platforms. Maybe at the end of the day, they just didn't want to make Shefty look bad.
It's interesting, Mike, that this didn't get out before now. I mean, you think about how long ago this was that they talked to Brady and where we are now, and nothing stays a secret that long. So it is amazing that this never got out. And for whatever reason, Brock Purdy decided to talk about it this week. Whenever he talked to him last week, I guess he talked to him. Whenever it was that he talked to Brock Purdy, and Brock Purdy chose to deliver this bombshell, as you said, and I think it is. But you know, nothing stays a secret that long. So I don't know how or why, or like nobody got wind of this. Like, it's really interesting that it just stayed quiet this long.
And one of the reasons it may be staying quiet, and it could be the product of, and look, when you cover a team, and Charean, you did it, and I'm trying not to be pejorative here, I'm trying to be realistic. When you cover a team, there are certain deals you have to make. There are certain when in Rome realities you have to follow. If you want to have maximum access to the people you want to talk to, you don't want them to be pissed off at you. And it's possible that the beat writers who cover the team knew about this. They're not asking about it because they know Kyle's going to be pissed at him if they do. Because this isn't just something that's a bombshell in the rearview mirror. It potentially becomes something that can unfold in a negative way for the 49ers going forward. It creates a distraction if it's something that becomes a big talking point as they get ready to host the Lions in the NFC Championship game, because it speaks at some level to a potential lack of faith in Brock Purdy being the guy. All season long, he was the guy. He was brink of the MVP conversation. And then he has the meltdown against the Ravens on Christmas night. No MVP for Brock Purdy, but he's still the guy. He's the guy. Why don't more people believe in Brock Purdy? That was a narrative that they fought against all year long. Why do people not believe more in Brock Purdy? What's the deal with this? Why isn't Brock Purdy regarded as a top quarterback? That's been one of the big talking points this year. Well, now you find out they wanted Tom Brady, 46-year-old Tom Brady, instead of Brock Purdy to be their quarterback this year. So, with the stakes getting higher and higher each week, and when you consider that on Saturday night, Brock Purdy was not Joe Montana or Tom Brady or Steve Young. What if he has a bad game? What if he has a 3-interception night against the Lions? What if they get to the Super Bowl and he has his meltdown there? What does it mean for 2024? Do they recommit to Brock Purdy, who'll be entering the third year of his contract? Or do they try to sign the guy that they saw have the best game of his career against them on a Monday night 6 days before he tore his Achilles tendon? He's going to be a free agent, and Kirk Cousins has been tied to Kyle Shanahan for years. So I'm not thinking Tom Brady next year. I don't think they're going to revisit that after he's been out of football for a full year. Even if he would say, hey, you know what, I sat out for a year, I'm ready to play now, can I come back? They'll probably say no. But will they say yes to Kirk Cousins? Will they pursue Kirk Cousins if Brock Purdy has one of those crash with a thud, end of the season games that just creates enough doubt to say, if we finally want to win a Super Bowl, maybe we need to let Brock take a step back and go after somebody who we think is more likely to come in and finish this job. Without the Tom Brady story that was buried for a week that came straight from Brock Purdy, we don't have that conversation. With that story out there, Charean, that becomes fair game. It makes what Brock Purdy does on Sunday, if he has a 3 or 4 interception day, it makes it a very viable talking point into the offseason.
I don't think there's any possibility that they move on from Brock Purdy, that they go out and find another quarterback. But you are 100% right, Mike. This opened up the question of what happens if they don't go win the Super Bowl, and it's because of the quarterback, whether it's in the NFC Championship game or the Super Bowl. It does open the door to that question. So, I think that Kyle Shanahan, even if no one answers, probably needs to address it if, in fact, Brock Purdy's going to be their quarterback next season, no matter what. And if that's the case, I think he needs to come out and say, look, we're committed to Brock Purdy this season. We're committed to Brock Purdy for next season, regardless of what happens, regardless of how he plays. I just think that needs to be addressed by him. And maybe it's done privately to Brock Purdy. I don't know, but there are going to be questions if Brock Purdy plays poorly and they lose about because we saw it with Jimmy Garoppolo. It's exactly what happened. They finally decided to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo after they couldn't win the Super Bowl. So I think all those things together, when you take all that evidence, it is going to be a question. Again, I don't think anybody but Brock Purdy is going to be the quarterback of the 49ers next season. But because of this and because of what happened with Jimmy Garoppolo when they couldn't win the Super Bowl and he was so bad in the fourth quarter that they decided they needed to move on from him eventually, that I think it is going to be a legitimate question if Brock Purdy doesn't play well.
As somebody who always roots for good stories, good meaty stories that have layers and levels of intrigue, this one item opens Pandora's box in a variety of contexts. At ESPN, within the press corps covering the 49ers, and most importantly within the 49ers. And as Chris Sims would say when you ask him what's in Pandora's box, a whole lot of Pandora. That was an actual answer for him. Yes, Pandora's box containing Pandora, not whatever was unleashed onto the world, et cetera, et cetera. I'm at the point now where I've been dealing with Sims for so long, I forget the details of what was in Pandora's box. I will refresh my memory during this next break. When we return, is the window closing for The Buffalo Bills. We heard from Josh Allen yesterday, and we'll give you some thoughts on where things stand in Buffalo when PFT Live continues right after this. Hi, it's Mike Florio. Thanks for watching PFT on YouTube. Hit subscribe for the latest news and analysis from Pro Football Talk.